Hey guys, this is desperation kicking in here. We're at the mall.
We're old.
We're struggling because we had to walk past Auntie Anne's. So Mike's like, oh man. And then we got approached by someone selling Girl Scout cookies. So coming here to try to get our steps in is actually becoming a temptation, right?
Right. Good thing we don't have any money.
I was like, I'm so sorry, we don't eat cookies.
Little girl's like, this is bull crap.
I didn't know what to say to her, but we're here. And we'll give you guys an update on how far we get
Before the mall closes.
When we do our dinner. Yeah, the mall closes at 8. We had no idea it closed this early. I mean, that's early for us, you know. We haven't even had dinner yet,
Right.
So. All right, see you guys soon. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Dawn. What?
I think it's good night.
Yeah.
It's well past evening.
It's 9 o'clock. Welcome to my channel. My name is Dawn, and this channel is Dawn Does Keto. This channel is all about my accountability and my personal journey on the ketogenic diet. But on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, we do Dinner with Dawn.
And Mike.
Where we eat and we discuss a book, which right now we're talking about The Case Against Sugar by Gary Taubes. We're just now sitting down to eat, so we'll get into that a little bit.
I think we should call this Dawn Does Keto late.
At night.
So my plate just has eggs on it because I haven't had time to put all the rest of my stuff on my plate.
So I have
the same thing she has.
Yeah, we each have 4 eggs, bacon, and 2 chaffles is what our dinner is tonight.
Tonight was Murphy's Law night at Dawn Does Keto. If it was going to go wrong tonight, or go wrong at all, tonight was the night. We had terrible weather, raining all day. Not cold, but raining all day. Couldn't go out for a walk, so we had to make alternate plans. So we go to our local mall, which really isn't local. It's like 20 minutes away. So we drive there. It's the only one left in the area.
And we didn't realize that they closed at 8 o'clock either.
Right? They're not open like they used to be. So we get there and we're like hustling through the mall. There's only like 14 people there. And
the reason that they close early.
Right. So we get in like 2.25 miles walking in the mall, which was great because otherwise we get 0.
And we did 2 miles yesterday. We had originally said we weren't going to walk because we had the tour of the venue for our daughter's wedding. But actually, we hustled, and after work, we got in 2 miles before we left to go to the tour.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're getting the miles in wherever we can. We're sneaking them in.
But we were running late tonight because I had a hair appointment. I forgot I was supposed to go pick up the name tags for KetOH-IO this weekend. So we ended up having to go do that because I didn't do it like I was supposed to. We had to go to the bank, and it was just one thing after another, so.
Yeah, and then we had to come home and finish cooking dinner. We started, then we had to finish. We have a very small kitchen. We have very little counter space, so it's very difficult when we cook inside if we use other appliances. So we have it's like a jigsaw puzzle trying to make room. I dropped the electric skillet. Actually, I didn't drop the electric skillet. The catch-all tray that comes with it fell out onto the floor and busted into like 4 pieces.
The grease trap.
It's a nice skillet. We didn't use it very often. And I almost dropped the pepper into my eggs just now. It's just the way it's been today. We're being challenged and tested today in the filming of our video, but we'll get it. So just bear with us.
So speaking of getting our miles in, I just wanted to give a couple shout outs to some people who have been commenting how they're doing on the walking challenge this month. So first off, Pat, she hasn't been doing a certain number of miles, but she's been doing 10,000 steps a day since the 1st of March. And I think there's only been 1 day, maybe 2, where she was like in the 9,000s and she didn't quite hit the 10,000s, but she's been making sure she gets them in. So good job, Pat.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Phyllis T sent a message yesterday and said she was at 47 miles already for the month. Everyone's crushing us. I don't know Alan's exact number because I couldn't find the last message that he sent, but I know he's way up there. Alan.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Johnny G, he didn't say in his last message, he just said he got another 3.5 miles in and that he was probably going to be close to 90 by the end of the month.
Yeah, he was talking about 100 and then said he made
Well, I
short.
said he would probably hit 100. I thought he would because, and he said, no, I probably won't hit 100, but I'll probably hit 90. Kristen said yesterday she was already at 38 miles and Karen had already hit 50 miles.
We would have been there already too if we hadn't gotten sick.
Yeah, we would have been up there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just wanted to tell everyone what a great job you guys are doing and all the movement everyone is getting in this month is just awesome.
Dawn and I are thinking about walking down to Columbus on Saturday so we can get our miles in.
Might be the only way
We're going to leave tomorrow, and then we'll walk down and we'll be there by noon.
Yeah, because for those who don't know, the meetup is in Columbus, and that's about a 2-hour drive for us. So it's not local for us either. So I woke up today and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do to break my fast today. And I'm out of hard-boiled eggs, and we had baggy bacon in there, but I knew we were having bacon and eggs for dinner anyway. So I was like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? I ended up just doing a warm caramel macchiato keto chow today. That was what I had. So that's all I had today was the warm keto chow and my coffee. What'd you have today?
So we had that magnificent roast the other day because last night we went to the venue so I could see the venue that our daughter's getting married in.
Which we didn't even get home till 10 o'clock last night.
Yeah. I opted not to eat the leftover roast last night because I knew I had to go to work today and we wouldn't have any leftovers, so I saved that for today. So I took that to lunch with the little bit of green beans I had left. And let me tell you, that roast reheated was just as good as it was fresh out of the crock pot. Oh my gosh, good. Fantastic. I ate the whole thing. There was a ton of it left.
I was going to say, I don't even know how much was left.
There was a lot. I crammed it right down, but it was so good. And it got better as I was eating it. Like the first couple bites, I'm like, this is so good. And then as I started eating, I'm like, oh my, it just was so good. I just can't even tell you. We have to never not make it like that again. We have to use that exact type of roast.
Well, I told him I don't have any more beef soup keto chow left, so I'm going to have to get more if he wants me to make that again. So real quick, before we jump into our book discussion for the evening, Mike and I did, the video came out yesterday for Break Down the Box, and one of the things that we really liked in the Break Down the Box was the can-do bars. And so I stopped into Pop Shelf today because it said online that they carried them at Pop Shelf. So I stopped in. They have 7 spots for 7 different flavors. I mean, there's a lot of them. And they literally had 2 bars on the shelf. That was it. So I bought them. This actually says Keto Crisp on it, but it's the same exact bar. It's Can Do. And John actually sent a message and said they're repackaging and they're going from being Keto Crisp to Can Do Crisp. They wanted to, I don't know, get away from the keto name, but then they turn around and put it in a keto box. So I'm not really sure.
Right.
Maybe that's why Pop Shelf didn't have any, because if they're repackaging everything to go from Keto Crisp to the Can Do name, that might be why they were out of them, because these were literally the only 2 that they had. Now, I also don't know with changing the name if the ingredients are going to be the same, because the ingredients on this bar was different than the one that we tried. And what I mean by that is, so this has almonds, chicory root fiber, and whey crisps, which are whey protein concentrate, rice flour, which the crisps in the one we tried did not have rice flour in it. So maybe they've changed the formula and taken that out. The ones that actually say Keto Crisp on them do still have rice flour in the crisps. So it's like a small amount, but it's still in there. Coconut, cocoa butter, erythritol, milk protein isolate, whey protein isolate, MCT oil from coconut, sunflower lecithin, sea salt, natural flavors, and stevia. So again, other than the chicory root fiber and it being kind of high in fiber, the only thing in this one that I found that I wasn't super thrilled about was the rice flour that were in the crisps. So all I found were these 2 that had the old packaging, but I went ahead and grabbed them, and I figured maybe after dinner you and I could just share one and taste it. But it's still the Can Do. It does say Can Do right here. It's just still got the old packaging where they actually call it Keto Crisp, which it is not now apparently. So in our book today, we're reading chapter 8, and it's called Defending Sugar. And this was a very long chapter. It was 40 pages long. So this was one of those chapters where we had to...
We're doing 1 page at a time.
Yeah, it's going to take us 40 days to get through it. So we had to split it up. So we only read about half of the chapter. So we'll talk about a little bit of it tonight, and then we will have to finish it up on Tuesday. Now, actually, that may work out perfect because next Thursday, a week from tonight, there won't be a Dinner with Dawn video.
Nope, it's just going to be Dinner with Mike.
There won't.
No book,
No.
Just me chowing down.
But you won't be recording it. So
Why not?
Are you going to record a video and edit it and put it up?
I'll just record it and post it. Who cares about editing? I get to see the real Mike.
Yeah.
They want more Mike, they're going to get more Mike. You want more Mike? See, they're shaking their head.
I am going to be out of town. I've talked about this in previous videos that I'm going on a girls' trip and we are leaving early Thursday morning.
What time are you leaving?
Well, they wanted to leave by 9, but I told them I'm going to do my best because I have to go help your mom before I go. So I'm going to have to be at your mom's house by 8. Help her, and then it's a half-hour drive to my girlfriend's house where we're meeting, and they want to be on the road by 9 o'clock. Anyway, Thursday video is off the table.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, guys.
All that being said, we will finish up chapter 8 on Tuesday. We'll wrap it up, and then we won't have another video as far as reading until the following Tuesday. Yeah.
Till Tuesday. If you're an 80s music fan like me, you know who that is. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, well, I don't. So it starts off talking about a nutritionist. She was a Harvard nutritionist. Her name was Jean Mayer. And she actually published an article in June of 1976 in the New York Times Magazine titled The Bitter Truth About Sugar. And it was linking sugar to not only cavities, but also to obesity and type 2 diabetes. Mayer suggested sugar is quite possibly as addictive as tobacco. So with that, there was a gentleman named John Tatum Jr., and at that time, he was the president of the Sugar Association. And so he started coming out and doing presentations about this whole situation and defending sugar, basically, which is what the title of the chapter is about. He did some talks. He did one in Scottsdale, Arizona that said sugar is a healthy, if not ideal, nutrient. And their whole goal at this point was, again, just promote sugar and
save face because they were under attack because the truth was starting to come out.
And try to prove that these things that were being said in the New York Times was that those things were wrong.
Yeah.
And here's how far they went. Those things were supposed to be also published in Reader's Digest, the things that Mayer had said about sugar. And they went on a full-on campaign. Tatum, he described how when they learned of the Reader's Digest article coming out and how they planned to take excerpts from the New York Times Magazine article, they went on a full-on, like, this is not going to happen, and they managed to kill that article completely.
And look, folks, you know as well as we do, if they're not guilty, they don't go to all this trouble. So today, if you wanted to do that, right, you just send an email and have a social media campaign. In about 35 seconds, you've made your point. But they had to write letters, send telegrams, wiretaps. They had to do all this old school stuff.
They spent hours and hours and hours getting the article in the Reader's Digest completely thrown out.
Making threats, I'm sure. It doesn't say that in the book, but, you know, that was the 70s. I mean, there was a lot of shady stuff going on. And I'm telling you right now, this tells me they knew that this information was going to get out and it was right.
Yeah, and they were trying really hard to defend sugar.
When you have to defend sugar by going on the offensive, you know there's a problem, and that's exactly what happened right here.
Right. So the newspaper started calling it the war on sugar because of this whole back and forth, articles coming out saying it was bad, them defending it. You just basically had the sugar industry twisting their side of it, selling their bill of goods to the American people. And then you had people, prominent nutritionists, physicians, and laboratory researchers who began to publish reports suggesting that sugar seemed uniquely capable of causing a cluster of metabolic abnormalities.
Yeah, so the medical community and the scientific community, they're starting to put the puzzle pieces together. And so, of course, then the government has to get involved now because now they've got to kind of try to squash this a little bit. So then the FDA gets involved. And if you guys remember from previous chapters, there were foods and ingredients that were they fell under an umbrella that was called GRAS, G-R-A-S, generally recognized as safe.
You wanted to be on that list.
You wanted to be on that list.
Because then that made it okay for you to be in food and different things because it was safe to eat.
Right. So now the government wants a full investigation because there's a possibility that sugar is going to get yanked off this list. And boy, did that just go nuts.
Yeah.
And
this gentleman, Tatum, who was the president of the sugar industry at the time, he was not having it. So there was a huge battle. And in 1970, the sugar industry won that battle.
They spent more money and they pushed harder, and they basically convinced those that mattered that sugar's okay. It's not as bad for you as you think. It's good for you. We need it. Let's just keep on doing what we're doing.
And they said that battle, it was one of the great public relation triumphs of the food industry. The Sugar Association executives certainly perceived it as such.
Oh, yeah. So I was born in 1970, so the 70s and the 80s, right? That was my childhood. Just one aspect of my childhood that I remember vividly were sugar-coated cereals. Now, we talked about this in another video about cereals and that whole thing. But because of this win, because of this public relations victory, if you were my age, if you're in your 50s and you remember the commercials, I mean, it was just cereal, 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 kids, 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 commercials, commercials, commercials. I mean, that's all they did. They pushed that stuff down your throat. And you know what? We ate it all the time. So they definitely won. And they got, because of it, that also caused consumer confidence to go up in sugar. So people start eating it like, hey, maybe it's not so bad.
Well, it says by the mid-1980s, academic or government researchers who suggested that sugar could be a cause of heart disease or diabetes said they were risking their credibility in the process. So if they came out against sugar, that was not good. It made them look bad, and then they were under attack. Yep. So people basically started to become afraid to speak out against big sugar, is what it boiled down to.
That's the kind of intimidation. And look, that stuff goes on today. Different products and different things today. Same thing. Sugar, they continue to do that. I mean, they continue to push it.
Well, and during that time, they saw the greatest increase in sugar in at least half a century.
Yeah.
But this was accompanied, coincidentally or not, by equally dramatic increases in the prevalence of obesity and diabetes. Yeah. But again, at this point...
But they're not linked.
All the doctors and government are afraid to speak out.
There's no prominent evidence to say otherwise.
Right.
Again, during the 70s, when they really hit this hard, I mean, it was all-out war. They basically said, you got to defend sugar and you got to make it right at all costs. It doesn't matter what it takes. Do it. And they did. That's why they won. Yeah,
so they got nutritionists and everybody on board. They needed to deflect from sugar. At this point is when they start pointing to fat. As being the bad guy, because we need to start making everyone see that it's something else and it's not sugar. It wasn't enough to just defend sugar and say it's not sugar. They had to give a scapegoat, basically.
Yeah. It doesn't say like whose idea this was or how they came to this.
It was Ansel Keys, for sure.
Well,
yeah, Ansel Keys played a huge part in... One man came up with this and did a study, and it's called the 7-Continent Study. You guys might know about it. We haven't gotten to that in this book and whether or not they talk about it.
Right.
But how he used the numbers to just back up
what it was he was
trying to say.
Yeah. We heard about that at Ketopalooza, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably. I mean, everybody knows it was literally that one person. So, I mean, we haven't really gotten to that part yet, but of course, cholesterol becomes the bad guy. We've talked about this before. And they did a study where they pumped rabbits full of cholesterol. This was their, proving that, high cholesterol causes heart disease. They pumped rabbits full of cholesterol, but rabbits don't even eat cholesterol. They're vegetarians. So of course their bodies, they're not made for eating meat like we are.
Right.
So of course they had a negative reaction to it. And then they're like, oh my goodness, look at what this cholesterol, look at what it does.
Yeah, look what it did to Bugs Bunny. Eats carrots and look at him. He's got high cholesterol. And again, look, we know, all of us out there know, when we do studies and we try to learn things, they use animals, right? Laboratory rats, rabbits in this case. I mean, we get that. And we know that a lot of good things have come from that. That's about the only way we can do it. But we also have to keep in mind that we are human beings. We are not rabbits, rats, mice. So whatever they do, even in moderation, is not going to affect us the same way it affects them.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
And again, our ancestry is to eat meat. Rabbits are not. So to give them that, of course they're going to have, an adverse reaction to it. So in 1952, Ansel Keys, who was a nutritionist at the University of Minnesota, started arguing that high blood levels of cholesterol was what caused heart disease, and that it was fat in our diets and not sugar that caused high blood pressure and heart disease. The funny thing is, his studies were funded by the sugar industry.
What? Come on. You almost make me choke on my non-sugary beverage. That can't be right. Let me get where are my spectacles?
And they said he had a very, very overbearing personality, and that he basically forced the issue with this. His thinking and the strength of his personality would drive nutrition research for the next 30 years.
All right, so that's early 50s, so that takes you right into the 80s. Oddly enough, when Dawn and I were walking tonight, we were talking about this. I remember, I was a teenager in the 80s, and I specifically remember that was the time for me when I started to notice on TV and advertising campaigns and other things like that. Cable was coming out. I was noticing that there was an increase in people and advertising for bigger people. That was just happening, and it was becoming a thing, so much so that they were promoting it. And at the time, you don't think anything about it. I mean, I'm a kid. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about, obesity per se or the causes of it. But as an adult now, being in the keto world, and I look back on that, I can see that this guy, Ansel Keys, that was a result of all this hard pushing he was doing.
His pushing got the American Heart Association on board.
Yeah.
And once they were on board, they also focused on the fact that dietary fat was the culprit.
Yeah.
And by 1970, the American Heart Association was advocating for low-fat diets. And that's where the whole low-fat craze starts.
Yep.
Which I've said before actually made us fat.
Well, and see, this is the great thing.
We were eating lower fat but higher sugar.
And this is a great thing about research. There are going to be mistakes made. Things are going to happen. Things are going to be said. Things are going to be believed. And it's not going to be intentional all the time. Maybe it is, but I have to believe that some of the stuff they genuinely thought was right. But here we are 30 years later, 40 years later, we're starting to see now that those studies were flawed. That information was flawed, clearly.
Well, and it wasn't even a lot of studies. It was just more him just saying it. There was no actual critical studies that proved what he was saying.
No, you're right. There was very, very little documented evidence to suggest that anything he was saying was correct.
And he became the face of nutrition. So he was on the cover of Time magazine, just kept reiterating over and over that fat makes you fat, fat makes you fat, fat causes heart disease. So of course, people are going to believe it. It's logical. It sounded logical.
Well, it sounds logical, and I was going to say this earlier, but if you look at it, if you have a visualization of fat, right, like on a steak, you get a steak with a piece of fat on it, it looks fatty. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but it does. That was probably the most ingenious way to convince people that that's what made you fat. Because it looks...
And again, it was all a deflection away from sugar.
And, it only takes a little, get the ball rolling just a little bit downhill and it gains speed and picks up speed. And that's what that did because it made logical sense to most people. And there was no way they were going to question it because, well, look at it. It's fat. I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to cut that off. So now we're looking for lean meats and we're looking for lean this and fat-free this, like you said, low fat. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing what one person could do.
And the few trials and studies that they did do were all over the board. There was nothing that conclusively proved that what he was saying. As a matter of fact, there was even one study that showed that eating more fat or saturated fat could even lengthen your life. And of course, they're not going to tell you about that.
And you know what? Those impacts are still being felt today because when I talk to people at work and they ask me about, I think I told you before, one of my coworkers said, well, how do you get your carbs? And what do you mean, how do I get my carbs? I mean, I get some because there's some.
Yeah.
But you don't need carbs. Oh, okay. I mean, the discussion ended because it's been pounded in his head that you need carbs.
The other thing is the American Heart Association started recommending not a low-fat diet for everyone. That included men, women, children, infants, pregnant women.
Yeah, and think about that.
And none of the trials or none of the studies were done on anybody but men. But immediately they started recommending a low-fat diet for everybody.
You know, if you remember some of the other discussions we've had between Dr. Berry's book and now this book, infants in every animal that nurses, the mother's milk is high in fat. There's a reason for that. There's a specific designed reason for that. And then you have
the American Heart
Association coming by and saying, hey, if you're nursing mothers, if you're pregnant mothers, you need to be eating low fat. What? I mean, now you're affecting, you know, the child in the womb. It just makes me start to think about some of the issues that we have today. Some of the illnesses, some of the, I don't want to say diseases, but, you know, some of the health issues that we're dealing with our children today, and it could be directly linked to this type of behavior.
That they're not getting enough, they're eating too much sugar and they're not eating enough fat.
They're not getting enough fat.
I mean, I believe that. And when it comes to sugar consumption, they were talking again about after World War II, the amount of sugar that people were eating. They were eating in 2 weeks the amount of sugar our ancestors of 200 years ago ate in an entire year. They were eating it in 2 weeks.
There's no way that's not affecting your health. Mm-hmm. I don't care what you eat. I mean, you could eat that much more meat. It's going to affect your health in some way. It could be positive. I'm not saying it would be a bad thing. But my point is, when you take something that you eat in an entire year and you condense it down to 2 weeks, we're not talking like 6 months. We're not like cutting it in half. You're talking down to 2 weeks. There's definitely going to be some health effects. There's going to be some negative health effects down the line.
So that's about as far into the chapter as we got tonight.
She got.
Yeah. Mike actually read a little bit further than me, but I ran out of time. So
yeah, we just don't have, there's not enough daylight. Today was just, I told you, it was Murphy's Law today, and she did everything she could, but just couldn't get there.
We really had to try to eat at least by 9 o'clock, and he still has to go help his mom and dad tonight. So we couldn't put it off any longer.
Right.
And again, yeah, we just ran out of time, but very interesting how they are basically defending sugar. Keep saying that, but that's what they're doing. They're deflecting all of the negative press off of sugar onto fat at this point.
And that would explain, too, why this chapter is so long. Because clearly the defense of sugar was a big deal. And it still is.
Yeah.
And that's why that chapter is so extensive. And,
so we will try, we're not going to try.
No, we
will finish chapter 8 before Tuesday's discussion.
Yeah. So for those of you that are, reading the book with us, but maybe a little bit behind, we will finish chapter 8 on Tuesday. Thursday, then we'll have our little hiatus. And then the following Tuesday, when Dawn comes back from her shenanigan weekend, then we'll jump right into chapter 9, and everybody should be on the same level, the same chapter, and we can hit the home stretch.
Yep. So that's where we're at. Also, we are going to try this bar really quickly, but I also noticed that it does have, so the total carb count, I think on the one we tried the other day was 13, and it had 8 grams of fiber.
I think it was 16.
It was 16 with 8 grams?
With 8. I think it was half, yeah.
Okay, this one has 18 total carbs, and it has 10 fiber.
So the proportion's about the same, but it's just higher.
Yeah, and of course it has 4 sugar alcohols, so.
We'll open it, let's go.
So again, this one is just called almond butter. There's nothing else in it. There's no, Dustin from Keto Simple said he really liked the almond butter with chocolate chips, but this one does not have chocolate chips in it.
Just give me that half.
You want the bigger half.
I want the bigger half.
So I'm eating less carbs, just so you all know.
Well, she didn't break it in half evenly. Good.
It is good. It's not really like peanut buttery. It's almond butter.
It has that same creaminess to it that the other one had. It's not.
I'll be curious to see when the new can-do bars come out and it's not an actual keto crisp, if the crispy things that are in here still contain rice flour, or if they've changed it, because there was definitely no rice flour in the one that we tried the other day, because I read all the ingredients. So yeah, we had never had a keto crisp bar. So I guess we're behind the times, but we're liking them. So that's everything for tonight, guys. You're so mean. Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you for all of your comments. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. And hit that bell notification button. That way, when we do upload a new video, you will be alerted to it. Have a great evening.